This is Land of Havilah, 2 Samuel 21. Sheba the son of Bichri is dead. The rebellion's over. Now on to a completely different problem. Verse 1. There was a famine in the days of David for 3 years, year after year. And David sought the face of Yahweh. Yahweh said, "It is for Saul and for his bloody house, because he put the Gibeonites to death." The king called the Gibeonites and said to them, Comment, this verse is about to interrupt itself with some information in parentheses that tells us who the Gibeonites were and their history with Israel. Still in verse 2. Now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites, and the children of Israel had sworn to them, and Saul sought to kill them in his zeal for the children of Israel and Judah. Comment, there's a lot of background in those two verses. Yahweh said he brought the famine because of what Saul did to the Gibeonites. This goes way back 400 years to a treaty that Joshua made with the Gibeonites during the days that Joshua and Israel were invading the Promised Land. At that time, the inhabitants of the Promised Land were melting away in fear because of the invasion. They knew how the God of Israel parted the Red Sea, how he wiped out the Amorite kings Sihon and Og, how Yahweh stopped the flow of the Jordan River, and how he annihilated Jericho and Ai, Joshua 2, 9 through 12. The Gibeonites were aware of all that, and understandably they wanted to make peace with Israel if they could. The Gibeonites at that time were living in 4 cities near Jerusalem, Joshua 18, 21 through 28. By terms of the covenant or treaty they were able to establish with the Israelites, the Gibeonites became permanent servants to the Israelites in exchange for their lives, Joshua chapter 9. But now, about 400 years later, we find out in this chapter that Saul broke the covenant. He began putting Gibeonites to death, quote, in his zeal for the children of Israel and Judah. But God, being serious about his own word, commanded that the Israelites be the same about theirs. Quote, when a man vows a vow to Yahweh or swears an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Numbers 30, verse 2. Now that David knows why Yahweh sent the famine, he's going to ask the remaining Gibeonites, whoever's left of them, what he can do for them. Verse 3. And David said to the Gibeonites, "What should I do for you? And with what should I make atonement that you may bless Yahweh's inheritance?" Comment, originally it was the Gibeonites coming to Israel for terms of peace. Now it's Israel coming to the Gibeonites. David wants them to stop crying out to God against them. He wants them to bless Israel instead. It's an unending principle that if we mistreat someone, their cries reach the ears of God, James 5:4. David wants those cries to stop so the famine will stop, verse 4. The Gibeonites said to him, "It is no matter of silver or gold between us and Saul or his house, neither is it for us to put any man to death in Israel." He said, "Whatever you say, that I will do for you." They said to the king, "The man who consumed us and who devised against us that we should be destroyed from remaining in any of the borders of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be delivered to us, and we will hang them up to Yahweh in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of Yahweh." The king said, "I will give them." Comment, the Gibeonites say they don't want financial compensation. They cannot in good conscience exchange money for life. In fact, Yahweh said the same thing in the law. Quote, "You shall take no ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death. He shall surely be put to death." Numbers 35:31. In other words, a murderer can't buy his way out of the crime. He can't just pay a fine. He must be put to death. And before there was the law, God told Noah, quote, "Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed," end quote. In other words, murder requires the death penalty, and Yahweh requires man to carry it out. So the Gibeonites don't want money. They're demanding that David turn over 7 of Saul's descendants for hanging, to be hung in Saul's hometown of Gibeah, which is the city that happens to be the original mother city of the Gibeonites. Verse 7. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of Yahweh's oath that was between them, between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul. But the king took the 2 sons of Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, whom she bore to Saul, Armoni and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she bore to Adriel, the son of Barzillai, the Maholathite. Comment, Saul had 2 descendants named Mephibosheth, one a son and the other a grandson. David spared the grandson because he was Jonathan's son. but he turned over one of them, Mephibosheth, who was Saul's son, another son, and 5 grandsons he turned over. There's a scribal misprint in this verse. It says the grandsons were the 5 sons of Michal, daughter of Saul. Merab and Michal were the daughters of Saul, 1 Samuel 14:49, and this verse should read Merab, not Michal, 5 sons of Merab David turned over. We can assume that this is a copying error for several reasons. For one, a few of the Hebrew source manuscripts indicate Merab, not Michal, NET Bible Translation notes. Also, the father of the 5 sons David turned over was Adriel, the son of Barzillai, who was Merab's husband, not Michal's. And third, there's been much more written about Michal, so it's easy to see how a scribe could have Michal on his mind when he was copying the verse. Verse 9, he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and they hanged them on the mountain before Yahweh, and all 7 of them fell together. They were put to death in the days of harvest, in the first days at the beginning of the barley harvest. Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it for herself on the rock from the beginning of harvest until water poured on them from the sky. She allowed neither the birds of the sky to rest on them by day, nor the animals of the field by night. Comment: Rizpah was Saul's concubine and mother of 2 of the dead men. She spread sackcloth on the rock, which seems to be the same as the landmark rock in Gibeon by the highway where Joab killed Amasa in the last chapter, 2 Samuel 20, verse 8. Rizpah stayed there day and night, protecting the bodies until it rained, which must have been a long time because the hangings took place at the beginning of barley harvest, which is late April, start of the dry season. Modern Jerusalem is about 5 miles from Gibeon. It averages 0 rainfall from May through September, so it seems Rizpah kept this up for months until the rains fell again in the fall. And by the way, we remember that Shimei the dirt thrower accused David of being a man of bloodshed in connection with the house of Saul, 2 Samuel 16:18. And this is probably the event he was talking about. But of course, none of this is David's fault. In fact, it's Shimei's relative Saul who's at fault. Verse 11, David was told what Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done. Comment: she protected the bodies for months and word got back to David. The Gibeonites allowed the bodies to stay on public display at that landmark rock by the highway in a very public place, and Rizpah protected the bodies all that time. The Gibeonites were exercising their right to shame the bodies, and Rizpah was doing what she could to honor them. This pitiable situation of Rizpah guarding the bodies came back to David. It moved him, so coming up he's going to bring this to a conclusion. Verse 12, so David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh-Gilead, who had stolen them from the street of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them in the day that the Philistines killed Saul in Gilboa. Comment: this goes back to the Battle of Gilboa when Saul and 3 of his sons were killed, including Jonathan. The Philistines put their bodies on display in Bethshan, and the men of Jabesh-Gilead came by night, stole the bodies away, and gave them a proper burial. Now David's gathering up those bones, plus the remains of the 7 bodies that Rizpah's guarding in Gibeon, and he's going to honor them all. Rizpah did a beautiful thing in honoring her sons and relatives, and it came from the heart of God. We know it's our duty to honor God, Revelation 4:11, but amazingly enough, God honors us. Psalm 8:5, quote, you have made him a little lower than the angels and crowned him with glory and honor, end quote. So God honored us when he made us, and we know he honored us again by dying for us. Therefore, we know that we should honor each other. If God, who is much greater than us, honors us, how will it hurt us to honor each other? 1 Peter 2:17, honor all men, end quote. Rizpah provided us an example of the honor that was born in the heart of God. Verse 13, and he brought up from there the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son. They also gathered the bones of those who were hanged. They buried the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son in the country of Benjamin in Zelah in the tomb of Kish his father, and they performed all that the king commanded. Comment: David's servants buried the whole family in Saul's father's tomb. Still in verse 14. After that, God answered prayer for the land. Comment: it's the start of the rainy season again, and this time the rain actually came. Now on to another subject, a few lines about gallantry, verse 15. The Philistines had war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him and fought against the Philistines. David grew faint. Comment, David grew faint, probably because he's getting old, verse 16. And Ishbi-Benob, who was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of brass in weight, he, being armed with a new sword, thought he would kill David. Comment, Ishbi-Benob was a giant and a son of the giant who was Goliath, as the text makes clear coming up. David killed Goliath, and now Ishbi-Benob has the chance of a lifetime to avenge his father. He thinks he can do it. Maybe he can because David is faint, verse 17. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, helped him and struck the Philistine and killed him. Comment, once more the sons of Zeruiah to the rescue on the battlefield. They're exasperating and not completely trustworthy, but they're golden on the battlefield. Still in verse 17. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, Don't go out with us to battle any more, so that you don't quench the lamp of Israel. Comment, that was a nice way of telling David, you're getting too old for this. Like they told him back in Mahanaim, he's much more valuable off the battlefield than on it. His days as a soldier are now over. Verse 18. After this, that there was again war with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was of the sons of the giant. There was again war with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan the son of Jaare-Oregim the Bethlehemite killed Goliath the Gittite's brother, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Comment, in 3 wars, various heroes of Israel killed 2 sons and a brother of Goliath. Jesus said, quote, Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these he will do, because I go to the Father. John 14:12. David killed Goliath, and his servants are doing the works that he did because of Yahweh. Giants are falling right and left. Verse 20. There was again war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on every hand and 6 toes on every foot, 24 in count, and he also was born to the giant. When he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Comment, that's Goliath, 4 sons and a brother, 6 giants killed, 1 short of the complete number. The 7th is for you and me. Christ is crucified and fainted away like David, so to speak. He's no longer on the battlefield, so it's time for you and me to step up. 2 Samuel 22 is next at landofhavilah.net, 2 Samuel 22. This is the map of 2 Samuel 21. David collected the bones of Saul and his sons from Jabesh Gilead, which was somewhere on the other side of the Jordan, and he collected the bodies of the 7 descendants of Saul that the Gibeonites hung in Gibeah. He buried all the remains in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, in Benjamin. 2 Samuel 22 is next.